Hi, this is Paula Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole because we like to go into topics more deeply. I'm very honored today to have two guests with me to go into a topic that's very important and needs to be gone into in greater depth, and that is Bernard Gavzer. Thank you for joining me.
Hi.
And his son, Adam Gavzer. Adam, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
How did you get into journalism?
By mistake. Literally by mistake. I was applying for a job right at the beginning of World War II, and I ended up in the wrong place and ended up getting a job as a messenger for the Associated Press in Chicago. And that's been my life ever since.
Wow. And Adam, what's your profession?
I'm a real estate agent in San Francisco.
Should marijuana be legal? Can you talk about how you did this article?
Well, I don't want to dwell on all that. It's been an ongoing interest, and I think the role of the media and the press was to bring some enlightenment to people about key issues that concern their lives. And that was typical of all the work that I really did with Parade magazine, and before then with the Associated Press and with NBC. And I don't want to try to recount that. I think there was a lot of cooperation that I got from some very serious people who took risks in being able to talk about this in this fashion, because the energy that went into it was solely from the point of view of you dealing with something that is critical and destructive to people, and it requires law enforcement activity all the time. We were looking at it in a different way. So that's what I did.
So journalism is a great social service.
Let's assume so, but not much. Well, I was going to say not much has happened, but some has happened because it's been legalized in California, and there are some other isolated places where this is free to be used and appropriately for the treatment of people who have serious setbacks as a result of this lack of medication, and this, with it, they're able to cope with their daily lives in a much more successful fashion.
Now, Adam, do you remember in 1994 what you were doing when this came out? And did you even know that your father was working on it?
I knew that he was working on this article. I was very proud that he was doing it because I felt strongly that marijuana laws were inappropriate. And I think there's two major aspects to it. There's the medical marijuana, and then there's full legalization. I think the road towards full legalization is through medical marijuana, because I think people can actually see the concrete benefits directly with either themselves or their family members or friends that are coping with debilitating illnesses. So when he was working on it, I was very proud that he was doing that, but I had no idea that in the future I would actually need to use this as a medication.
Now, I know you have an amazing story, but I want to just hold off for a minute on that. And I want to do a roll-in of Dr. Mishalim, Dr. Raphael Mishalim. He is a scientist in Israel who discovered THC in 1964. Would you find that interesting?
Sure. Yes.
Great. He wanted, as a chemist, to understand what the active ingredient in marijuana was. He called it hashish. Actually, that's the term that he used. He said that they knew the one in cocaine, they knew the one in opium, but they didn't know what the chemical formulation was for the active ingredient in cannabis. So he called up his local police department and he asked for some hashish to study. And he heard in the background someone says, "Is he okay?" And they said, "Yeah, he's okay." And they sent over 5 pounds or 5 kilos. And he started to study it, and he eventually discovered the chemical compound of THC. And the rest is history. You know, so many of the other works on it always cite his original work. He didn't know that he needed permission to ask, and the police department didn't know that they needed permission to give it. But since it was done, and he's like the godfather of you know, cannabis chemistry, he was grandfathered in. 10 years later, it seems the University of Virginia did some studies, and they found it was very efficacious for cancer. So that was the only background before we hear your story.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to talk about what
Sure.
happened to you?
In October of in 2006, October 2006, I was diagnosed with atypical Burkitt's lymphoma, which is a pretty rare but very fast-growing cancer. And I started chemotherapy over the course of 5 months were my treatments, and I was having really bad reaction to it. The nausea was just debilitating. I couldn't eat anything, couldn't get out of bed. February 2007 was the five months of treatment. 5 months of treatment. It's been just over 3 years since completing treatment, and I'm pleased to say that I'm all clear and totally cured. But to the point, I was waking up in the morning extremely nauseous. They would bring me my breakfast and I would want to vomit right away. Fortunately, my sister had offered to make me some cookies. So she found a great recipe for shortbread cookies, and it was essentially 1 ounce of marijuana for 1 pound of butter, and then she would just make the straightforward shortbread cookie recipe. So I would wake up in the morning, they'd bring my breakfast, I'd try to keep away from it, but I'd grab my cup of tea and have one little cookie, just a little square cookie, have it in my tea. Within a half an hour, like maybe even 20 minutes, all of a sudden the nausea would disappear. I was starving, I was ready to eat. I'd have a nice big breakfast, I'd put on my iPod and walk around and do laps around the ward, and everyone would look at me like, what's going on with him? And I just had this fantastic energy and great spirit about me, and the nausea was gone. So that's really the first time that I saw the medical benefits of this, and they were immediate.
So, Bernie, what do you think about changing our psychology? I mean, do you think he was healed because he had a better attitude? Do you think that it's important
Our psychology?
Well, do you think it's important to feel good to become healed?
Yeah, I think when you achieve something like that, there ought to be positive feelings. The questions that I have about whether it can be a widely spread and legal drug that is available to people concerns itself with the realities of what we do in a society that wants to maintain law enforcement in a certain way, wants to maintain a mafia, if you wish, in a certain way, because they all have roles that they're playing in the operation of this business. I mean, this can be all, I think, easily legalized if everybody gets a role in it.
Oh, in other words, nobody wants to maintain a mafia, right?
Right.
We don't even know, most people don't even know there is a mafia operating.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Do you think most people know that?
I think so.
Really?
I think people are aware that there's, anytime there's an illegal substance, there's going to be some way of distributing it, and there's got to be some sort of organized crime behind it.
Right.
Well, there are some really very adept and skillful people that are engaged in this. It's like whether you were on Wall Street or anywhere else, they know how to operate what is a saleable or rewarding enterprise in some kind of way. The thing is that what they've got to figure out is how everybody gets a piece of the pie. So that I mean, if you want to legalize it and then go around and license mafia people to sell it, I mean, they become licensed. I would rather see it turned over to like a senior citizens group, let them oversee the distribution and sale, or however you want to do it, of cannabis, and let them maintain senior centers and everything else for everybody's enjoyment out of those profits, and also reduce the cost of law enforcement, and also perhaps cut down on some taxes. So there may be positive
and
benefits.
Corrections. I mean, we wouldn't have to have so many people in jail and caring for these people throughout their entire life in jail, both medical,
yeah,
you know, all of that. If we pull that away and and put it more towards those that are having difficulty, whether they're addicts or something like that, that are having difficulty with drugs, then we could give them services.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I can see you and your dad have had a lot of discussions about this. I think a lot of people are really scratching their heads trying to figure it out because they're seeing the evidence that this is not a bad plant, this is a really good plant. And then the next step is, well, why don't we have this really good plant used more? But there tends to be sort of this moralizing that somehow if you don't use it, you're a cleaner, better person. And that's all I meant about the mafia. People usually don't think that keeping it illegal is creating the criminal element. They think that somehow it's not.
Well, it's sort of foolish and immature. It's a society has to grow up somewhere along the line and face the consequences of its actions. You decide you're going to make something illegal, it sets off a whole chain of events that have to take place to support that. And it's nuts. And,
to support that immaturity, you're saying it's immature to say this is illegal, to slap people on the hands?
I think it's fear. People do have a fear about things, but they can presumably learn. And perhaps another generation can come up that may be smarter, but if you want to control people by misinformation, for one thing, you create a substance and you make it frightful and illegal and terrifying. I mean, if you're concerned about the reaction that drugs can have to you, I think the most important danger we have on a universal level is probably the aspirin. Well, everybody's told take aspirin, but you can kill yourself with aspirin. I'm not so certain that you can do that with pot or cannabis, however you want to call it.
I'd switch aspirin to alcohol, personally. I think alcohol is far more dangerous than marijuana.
You know, when I started sort of searching into these things, my final conclusion is it seems to me so depressing that we're not allowed to grow a plant. But when you start to say you have levels of the plants, like the cocaine plant is bad or the opium plant is bad, if you really think about it, any plant is a good thing. It's been put there for a reason. And any society that's educated will know how to behave around the plant, whether it's opium or cocaine or marijuana. So it seems when you talk about alcohol and the different ones, they say, well, this is better than that. I think it gets people into this. It certainly did for me. I always thought, these were bad things. And alcohol is sort of an acceptable thing because you see it in the parties and everyone in your circle is doing it. But really, isn't it more about being able to have a good relationship with our plants?
Well, I also think that a lot of it has to come down to whether corporations can make money on it or not. And that alcohol is easily regulated and they can put it in a certain size and bottle and sell it for a certain amount, whereas marijuana, they don't have the understanding, at least at this point, how to do that. Whether
it's not as easily regulated.
Right. And the strength of it is more difficult to determine.
Right. Well, now, when your sister gave you these cookies, your sister took a risk.
I suppose so.
Because at that time, I don't think it was legal.
It was legal in California.
Oh, it was, so she was able to get it for you.
Well, she didn't buy it legally, but yeah, she bought it on the black market. And, but my doctors, my entire nursing team, nurse practitioners, physician, oncologist, everyone was aware that I was doing it, and they had no problem with it.
Right.
They were actually offering me medicinal marijuana, in the pills, Marinol, called, which I didn't find effective at all.
So you tried it?
It put me to sleep.
You tried it?
Correct.
Okay.
This capsule?
Yeah, little pill.
This was kind of part of the reason I wanted to have Michelim rolled in, because he says as a scientist, they want to know specifics, so they want to know the exact amounts. But other people who've been working with the oil have said, what's the use to divide them all up into different substances when you can just have one oil that includes everything? And perhaps you have different strains of plants that emphasize maybe more THC or more CBDs or whatever these other parts are, because it seems as though inflammation, epilepsy, Parkinson's is affected not by the THC but by other cannabinoids. So if you developed a plant, then it would be a matter of the seeds. So now you're back to who owns the seeds.
Right.
So if people
just keep Monsanto away from it.
Well, I know Monsanto has a very bad
reputation.
But it seems right now the feeling is as if you get the foot in the door with medical, then you can go the rest of the way. But others have said, if you get the foot in the door with medical, you're going to ensure that a Monsanto type of organization is going to control it, and then you still aren't going to have access to growing it in a planter box. Maybe you need a pound, because the Rick Simpson oil, you need about a pound to get a 3-month regime.
Well, begin a whole new agriculture movement. Everybody wants to get back to nature with food instead of we grow cannabis and carrots. All right.
Yeah, cannabis and carrots. No, I was looking through your files that you showed me here. I think in 1992, this is in the Wall Street Journal, it talks about Appalachian Kentucky relies on marijuana to buttress economy. Just 2 weeks ago, I interviewed a man who's going to be running for sheriff in one of the counties in Kentucky, and he started rattling off a whole list of relatives, all of who've died of cancer. They have a huge incidence of cancer in Kentucky. But nature, being as beneficent as she is, it seems that's also the area where you can just toss a hemp seed in the ground and it grows by itself. So he has an idea to let the farmers grow as much as they want, pay their county taxes in hemp, and the surplus, I guess they'll sell it off to whoever needs it for whatever, whether it's clothes or medicine. And the surplus could be used for people who can't afford it, who have these bad diseases. Because right now I'm getting calls from people, well, like there's one lady who had a brain tumor. She got the oil, the tumor started going down, and apparently whoever was supplying her the oil felt that maybe because she did an ad for the state of Indiana to try to legalize it, that she was too high profile, so the supplier might have felt nervous. She's not getting the oil and the brain tumor's coming back. So, and it's expensive now because you need to get these high concentrations. Like, you didn't actually cure your cancer with hemp oil.
No.
You did it with chemotherapy.
Correct.
But what you did was the bad side effects you alleviated. So with this robust attitude,
Correct.
Do you think you would have healed anyway? You just would have felt lousy?
Well, I think I would have wasted away a little bit more. I wouldn't have been able to maintain my appetite, and eating healthy is obviously very important to your health. You know, it was amazing to me along those lines that the hospital food was just horrible and disgusting, that they're there trying to feed you and make you healthy, but they're giving you this terrible food. So I relied on a lot of family and friends to bring me food while I was in the hospital. But
oh, maybe that's what it was, good home cooking.
Well, I think it was a lot of things. I think it was my doctor and his team that were really great. I think it was the support and love that I felt from my family. I think it was the medical marijuana that helped me maintain my appetite. And it was my good attitude and keeping positive.
Now, Joe Friendly is a public access producer, and he talks about the right to think, that it should be a constitutional right to think, and he said that marijuana helps him think more. He likes to smoke it. Once I started learning about the effects on cancer, it seems as though we have a right to health. There's a patent, a U.S. patent for one of some of the research that was done. 3 inventors gave away to the U.S. government a patent that showed the antioxidant effect of cannabis. And one wonders, why would scientists who could make a lot of money just give this away? My feeling is, I think they feel that it belongs to the people,
Right.
and that it isn't something you should be making money off of, although that seems to be what makes things spin.
Right.
So you've got the right to think, which is what Joe Friendly's talking about. And then there's the right to health. And then as we were talking, it turns out that Rick Simpson, the way he makes the oil is he takes a pound of cannabis, he puts it in solvent, he removes the fiber, and then he boils off the solvent. And in about 4 hours in a rice cooker, and you have to be very careful not to have a flame, because with these solvents boiling off, it's very inflammable. You're left with an oil. And then that oil you take over a 3-month period. Well, he made so much of it, and he was helping so many people, that he blew himself up once. And his hand was so badly burned that the skin was draping from it, and his girlfriend, that has a really strong stomach, cut off the skin. He went to the hospital. It was 3rd-degree burns. They wrapped him up. But he's the kind of guy, he just goes back to work, healing, making this oil. So he's got these bandages, and it had solvent in it with the hemp oil, and he didn't notice after some days the bandages were saturated, not just with the oil, but with the solvents that we tend to think of as pretty deadly and even carcinogenic. Everyone goes, oh, isopropyl alcohol, stay away from it, or whatever solvent he was using. So he takes off the bandages, he goes back to the doctor, and the doctor cannot believe how his skin healed. So as I was discussing this with Joe Friendly, we thought we should be going to the fire departments and handing this information out, because who is more susceptible to burns than firemen? So there's another effect.
I've not heard that.
Bernie, what do you think about the U.S. Constitution as a journalist?
What do I think about it?
Yeah, all these years.
I think it was very thoughtful of them to write it for me, and I'm glad. The Constitution sets forth our rights. I think we ought to pay close attention to it and get justices that can be sober in their judgments and evaluation of what it means in terms of our lives, our daily lives.
And you've been, what?
I've been what?
Heroic in protecting our Constitution by giving us good information, right?
I hope so, but I don't know how heroic it is. That's the point behind what, I was going to say, that's the point behind what journalism is. But that isn't it, because there are other sides that are also told in the name of journalism that are flat out lies or that are creations of fiction of some kind. So I don't want to hold up a standard for journalism. I'm not a teacher of any of that. I'm a participant in what it is.
But you've had to make judicious decisions, haven't you? I mean, in writing...
We like to think that we do, but it's our editors make they're all very capable people that are involved in a publication like Parade magazine, who give very meticulous study to the details and the substance of what you're writing. And you're held to account for it. And I think that's the real value of a lot of publications, that there are people that can kind of guide you from your misinterpretations or mistakes about what you do. It isn't a magic world that we're in. There's real energy and thought that goes into that. And I like to acknowledge the people that I worked with all through the Associated Press and all over the world. I mean, I've worked in every continent, well, not every nation, but all over the world. And there has been, at least in my life, I wasn't ever directed to write a particular story with a particular end and goal in mind, except the story that conveyed information that was valuable to people in making decisions that would be positive in their lives and that would uphold the Constitution that you're talking about as well. And I think we did a great deal of that, and I think the people that sometimes they have no bylines or anything, but they're essential to that. And they've, I think, done well.
So you probably don't remember, it was a long time ago when this article came out. Do you remember working with editors on this? what they were saying?
Well, I mean, yeah, because these are all people that I talked with and got to know, and I did get to know them, and you can see they're a vast group here, and
right.
they all, first of all, they were brave enough to be able to speak publicly.
Really?
A lot of people
Actually,
were
let me read this out. It doesn't take that long. He on this cover, he has, should it be legal? And people are saying yes and no. Legalization would sabotage significant progress we have made against illegal drugs. And that's Califano, Joseph Califano. He's the chairman and president of the Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia. And then we have U.S. Representative Charles Rangel saying, I will fight with all the vigor God has given me any step that would expand the opportunities for people to self-destruct. He's going to, be against that. Then this is very interesting. Dr. Lester Greenspoon, Christian Lorette, who's the producer of Run from the Cure, found your quotes about Greenspoon to be very, very relevant about what's happening today with, some of the evidence that it's not just to give you a better appetite with cancer, but it can actually address the tumors. And so, anyway, here's what you say in the front. Marijuana is an important medicine we have been overlooking or dismissing. I think it will prove to be one of the least toxic drugs in the pharmacopoeia. He also said the best way to take it medicinally was smoking. And now it seems as though that understanding has been superseded, and he was a little resistant to accepting it, although maybe it's because of the internet and it's spreading so quickly. It seems as though that's changing. You also have somebody here, the Director of Research, National Multiple Sclerosis Society. We have found no conclusive evidence marijuana is of any beneficial effect in treating multiple sclerosis. When I read that to Christian Lorette, he said, scan that, send it up to me. I want to show that to a man who has multiple sclerosis, and he worked with the hemp oil, and it did far more than just give him a good appetite, which is what you're talking about here in this article. There's one lady who had to go to court because she was growing 3 plants for her son with multiple sclerosis, and he indicated that it helped him to eat and not be so thin. But I'm going to ask Christian to get his person with multiple sclerosis because he felt it was much more. Now, this is what I want to ask you, Bernie. Since you've been a journalist for so long, since you've protected the Constitution for so long, since you've been so careful to give the right information, you are famous for your work with Timothy Leary, aren't you?
I don't know. I don't know what that means. I mean,
well, here...
well, that's not...
If we change the word famous to known for, maybe.
Known for.
It's not the...
Well, what I want to ask about now,
right,
I want to ask about the psychoactive parts, because
the
psychoactive parts of the plant, like Timothy Leary was known for changing his brain chemistry, right?
Right.
And
he was a remarkable human being.
Right. So you have great. Now here's what he said. Timothy Leary goes, I get really disgusted and despairing when I see young teenagers smoking grass and lying around listening to the Grateful Dead. That makes him sound like he's turned his back on everything you think he's about.
No, I don't think that.
So tell me about that.
Well,
it's a provocative quote.
And he was that kind of a personality. He was, he engaged people, and he wanted to stimulate people to be involved in really confronting what they were doing and how to address it on a broad scale. I mean, he had used, well, LSD is what he was really talking about after that, 311 times, I think, in his life. And he gave very, very serious consideration to all what these things could lead to and what they could do in expanding his knowledge, his range of knowledge, and his experience. And he was unafraid.
I think what he's saying there is, he doesn't want the movement to be pulled down by this image of kids just sitting around smoking pot and zoning out and listening to music, that he thinks there's a lot more strength and power in this plant, that the problem is so many people, and I think the big picture is that that's what it's about. It's just dropping out and getting high, and that there's so much more to it than that. So I think he was referring to the fact that he didn't want the movement to be pulled down by that. To address what you talked about earlier as far as smoking versus eating and all of that, I think the smoking certainly gives you immediate effect, and I think that can be very beneficial for patients or whoever's using it. However, sometimes there's situations like you're in a hospital, you can't smoke it. So it was really beneficial for me to have it in the edible form, and there's a lot of different ways you can eat it as well. And I think particularly people that are having lung issues certainly don't want to get into smoking it. They need to eat it as well. I have a good friend of mine who's dealing with a lung cancer right now, and it's very advanced, and he's now considering how he can use marijuana to his benefit, but he certainly doesn't want to get into smoking it. So we've been talking about making some cookies for him as well.
The Rick Simpson oil was put in a vaporizer, and there was one man, this is what really got Christian Lorette, the producer of Run From the Cure, going, because somebody had lung cancer and was not supposed to make it through the night. And they put it, I think, in a vaporizer, and he was able to breathe it. And it was so dramatic that later on he came before the camera, because he goes, look, even if this is illegal, I know I'm alive today because of it. I mean, all the people in the documentary are heroes. And so what I was thinking, if you can't grow a plant, in a way, we're not getting access to our Constitution. It seems as though our constitutional freedoms are being blocked. So then you think, are people smoking it to kind of adjust to being slaves? Or do you need to, like this Leary quote seems to me, he's saying, be a little more proactive when you're expanding your awareness. If you're thinking outside of the box, don't just lie around being passive listeners. Be active. Change things. Is that how you meant it? Or tell me about Leary. I don't know much about him, really.
How come we're not smoking it now? I mean,
but just a second, you're not a smoker. You didn't take LSD, I know that. You and I are kind of similar that way, because I told you, I don't smoke it.
I had, just to make sure the record is very clear, the most consistent drug use I ever had was Camel cigarettes, and I did break that habit. And doing investigative reporting, I tried various different things once. I've never, I'm not a pot smoker. No.
You didn't inhale.
Well, I didn't do anything. I really
just
did
not.
Deeply.
Not deeply.
And I don't feel a need for it. I mean, I personally feel no need to block out anything or encourage something or engage in something that is tied to some kind of drug in some kind of way. It doesn't interest me. I don't want to do it. It obscures what reality is for me. I want to be aware of what I'm involved with rather than disguise it in some kind of way. So I don't care what other people do.
And I think that's key, that just because he chooses that it's not right for him, he's not going to make a decision for other people. And that, and that's the problem here, is that some of those other quotes that you read, it's like they can say they would never, they don't think it's right, they don't want to allow people to do it, but it's like they can make that decision for themselves. I often wonder how they would feel about that if all of a sudden they were facing a cancer or AIDS or some other extremely debilitating disease, where they were offered this and said, look, you're feeling really bad right now. If you have this, you're going to feel a lot better. Do you want to try it now? And I bet you they're going to say, okay, give it to me. Let me try it. Forget all of what I said previously, that this is horrible and it has to be illegal and maintained as an illegal substance. I think things would change very quickly once they had a personal experience, whether it was themselves or a family member.
You know, to be quite honest with you, I don't think these people are being honest. I think maybe not these specific people, but I think a lot of people say one thing on the podium and they party in a whole different way. And I think that's the part where you want to get the population sort of up to scratch, to inform them, to not be told what to think, but be given the tools to figure it out. Not to be told what to think, but the tools how to think. So maybe Larry was trying to explore this with LSD?
I don't know, I can't speak for him, but
yeah.
he was, I felt he was very engaging, and he was very stimulating, I thought, and he was very challenging. He wanted you to explore the world with him, and he'd take these steps, but he wasn't, demanding it. It's just asking you to open your eyes, basically.
And you, as a journalist, participated with him. You wouldn't take the drug with him, but you would chronicle.
I was very, very well paid, and I was a journalist, and that's what the job was. I'm not trying to describe this as some kind of holiness about.
But what I mean is, even to say that he was that challenging, if it was just a job to you that you were paid for to do it, I don't think you'd do a very good job just to be paid to do that. I mean, it's a delicate situation.
I'm not customarily involved in discussing all these things, and particularly on television or anywhere else. So this is the first time I've done this, and
I think what journalists are constantly facing in their own life is how to report on something in a non-biased way, but also bring their own experience to the table as well.
Without being misunderstood.
Exactly. So I think, for my father, it was something that he was always conscious of how he would fit into the story, but without changing the story, without, he's there to report what's happening, but obviously he's the interpreter of what he's hearing and putting it into words and the written word, and then also he's got the editor behind him to back him up and do fact-checking and all that stuff. So,
I think there's a lot of benefit to not changing your consciousness if you're writing for people who haven't had, they're not under that influence. So you're going to be able to reach them better because a lot of people will write things and they think it's totally genius, and you look at it later and it's just.
Did we sign a vow of full disclosure before we sat down here?
What does that mean?
He's not my son. I've never seen his kid before. He's a PR guy.
I think to look at us, you can tell that we're related. So. But thanks for disavowing me. Thank you.
Did you ever get interested in journalism because your father was a journalist?
I do like to write a lot, and also, he's been in television in addition to print, and I've been influenced by that quite a bit. I recently worked on a project for my company that I work for. We were doing an in-house production, so I wrote, directed, acted in, and and I thought back to my experience of going to News Center 4 with him and watching production on the floor and how the stage manager worked in the control booth. So it's been very influential on me, yes.
What do you think about the changes in publishing? Either of you? Either of you?
I think it's sad that newspapers are on their way out, but I think everything's moving online. And
what are we going to do?
He's working on building a blog, and he was working with his wife on doing a video blog with her work and stuff like that. So I think it's transitional. We're in a real transitional time right now, going from newspapers in the traditional way to a more online experience, which can be very rich as well. But I think there's something lost in opening up that newspaper and sitting and reading it, which I watch him in the morning. He loves to open up his newspaper and sit there for a couple hours and just read through the whole paper, and it's a real joy for him.
Right.
And I
you
think
touch it and spread it out.
Yeah, exactly. And
Right.
get to change the pages and go back and forth and just feel it.
I can't remember any of it after I read it. That's right.
Now, the way I see it is that you write an article like this, you do the research, you get it all written, then you have another round with the editors, so you work with them. By the time it's printed and thousands of, pages are all over America, there's a certain platform of authority that you've worked to develop. You've checked your facts and things like that. And then people read it, and very, very few of them will ever rise to your level to write an article themselves if they don't agree. But you have other ways to kind of figure out what the population's thinking. On the internet, you post something and somebody can respond to it straight away, but you have far more opportunity for something where the facts haven't been checked, and there isn't any platform of responsibility behind it.
So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of people that are twisting things to suit their needs.
What do you think we can do about that?
Well, I think it's self-regulating in a lot of ways. I think the people responding, that's what's so nice about a blog posting, is that if you're saying something that is way out of line or off base or untrue, you're going to have a certain group of people that are going to immediately call you on it. And yes, you'll have the chance to come back and say, no, I think it's true for this reason. So in a lot of ways, it's opening more discussions around that, and it's very public. I mean, for me, I've struggled with blogging just because I feel like, oh my gosh, what I'm going to put out there, do I really believe it? Can I stand behind it? What if people start coming back at me? Am I going to be able to
Would you blog for your real estate company?
Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. I mean, I'm very interested in Henry George's work. Did you ever read Progress and Poverty? He wrote a book in around 1880 or 1885, and he kind of discovered what's the problem in our economy is monopoly. When fewer people have access to resources, rent goes up when wages go down and interest goes down. But if you could get a blog going, I bet what he uncovered would start to reveal itself again. People would see this, and then people could put their heads together how to work. That's what I feel. If the blog communities that develop can be kept vibrant and healthy, in other words, you don't have this ego and antagonism and nastiness, because you can have somebody, for whatever reason, they're just cranky people, or maybe they absolutely have an agenda to mislead because they want to sell a war, for example. Right. If you can overcome that and keep the communities together, they could be profoundly autodidactic, self-teaching.
Great.
So then it's a matter of developing skills of communication. So if people are nasty to me on one of my posting, I used to use Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication principles, where I said, give me information, not the labels. And when you dig around for the information, even somebody who really is angry and upset at you with some position, if you care more about their connection than whether they agree with what you've said, you're more likely to keep them as a viewer. And then you develop things.
Yeah.
But
what I also like about blogosphere is that
blogosphere?
Yeah, it's taking a lot of power away from the multimedia corporations that are used to.
Bless you.
They're used to controlling everything, and they want to have that control. So now that there's more people that have the power to self-publish in that way, it's really expanding the discussion, and you get a lot more viewpoints.
So the control that we used to be under, like say,
well, I think
to get
we
an
still
article.
are under it, but we're starting to see some easing of that.
How do you think we're still under it on the internet?
Oh, not so much. Well, there's still powerful corporations that are running large websites that and have a lot of blogs under them, and they're buying up a lot of these blog sites and stuff. But and there's still very much in print and television and.
Well, like in your personal case with real estate, has there been information you were trying to get out on your blog that was superseded by one of these mega blogs?
No, not that I can say.
No. You just wanted to make sure when you got information out that you could stand behind it.
Yeah, and
just personal integrity.
I think that a lot of blogging is really marketing, and certainly within my company, we blog so that we get our name out there, so that people see us as specialists in a certain area, and they contact us when they need information or want to sell a property or buy a property. So, and a lot of blogs are around that, but there's also a lot of blogs that are just, you know, whimsical, or this is some, you know, a blog you go on a person's site and they're just talking about things that they want to talk about, they're interested in, or they're linking to other things that they're finding interesting. And I think that's a fun way to do the blogging as well. But there are a lot of commerce-based blogs.
You know, Bernie, somebody told me that it was a very small amount of time in human history that we had newspapers. We didn't have newspapers in the
No,
you needed
you're just considering present life. You don't know about prior life. You don't know what your prior life was. That may have had lots of newspapers, but a different form.
Right.
We used to do by sundial, actually.
Well, when were the first newspapers distributed? At the Gutenberg Press? The Gutenberg Press?
I don't know.
Yeah.
About 400 years ago, about here in the United States.
So we're standing on the end of a paradigm, the end of an epoch.
You should have had more marijuana in your youth and learned a little more about what was going on. That's the answer to journalism today.
Smoke more pot.
More pot,
Okay.
I think. I'm sorry that I've got this sensation of, well, the cough came on me all of a sudden.
Well, it's cold in here. I'm sorry.
No,
they keep the
I
equipment.
brought it in with me. I brought it with me. But I don't want to interrupt your conversation. What time does dinner begin?
Dinner will be served.
Yes? All right.
This book, I want to say, is by Jack Hare, and it says The Emperor Has No Clothes. This was one of the books that Bernard Gavzer used to do research. And there's a new edition that's coming out, and this new edition is going to be edited by Ronnie Smith. And I interviewed Ronnie Smith a few weeks ago in Dayton, Ohio.
Good.
At the Patterson Homestead, and that's the ancestral home of the man who started National Cash Register. And the new edition is going to have more of the cancer experiences in it. Unfortunately, Jack Hare, I think he died a few days ago. But he just got in on that discovery with the oil. So things are changing. You wouldn't think that something so humble as a hemp plant could be so far-reaching in terms of helping our economy, even just on the industrial level for cloth and for paper.
Rope.
Rope.
All right.
Maybe we should bring back newspapers. Just print them on hemp.
No, we're going on to a new world. Things are changing.
Yeah, I think we can't be afraid of change. We have to embrace it and learn about it and see how we fit into it.
You're a cyber guy.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sort of between.
Did your use of cannabis help you in your career here as a television journalist?
I've never used cannabis as a television
That's your story.
journalist.
I mean, but what have
That's
you
my
really
story.
done?
No, it's the honest to God truth, but maybe I have to do something about that.
Well,
Because
sure.
I was up at Albany speaking to a pro-cannabis group, and last year, I think they said the Grateful Dead were there, so they had a big turnout. And this year, there wasn't a big turnout. But last year, only 15 or 20 people marched over to Patterson's office, across the street. And this year, although there seemed to be very few people, when she went into Patterson's office, lots and lots of people. They came out of the woodwork, young people and enthusiastic people. And so they were going to sort of tell Patterson that we need to change
Patterson to become a patient as well, right?
A patient,
He has sight problems and all. maybe he should smoke cannabis.
Yeah, or with glaucoma. I'll have to bring my eye doctor on because actually this is a radioactive stone. And I met Jane Goldberg because of going to a discussion in the Upper West Side about the beneficial effects of natural low-level radiation. And eventually, Jane and I worked on a documentary together, and while she would interview scientists, people like Ted Rockwell, who worked on the Manhattan Project, I was editing it. So I was learning how to edit. I had all this material, all these scientists talking about it, and I was freaking out because there were some contradictions and I couldn't, I couldn't make it work. So I sort of prayed. I said, oh my, please, what are these scientists saying? And then this peacefulness came on me, and I went at it, and I was on front of the computer for 13 hours that day, and it started to fall into place. You must have some experience like this, even being a journalist with longhand and typing, where the pieces aren't fitting into place. They're rubbing against, they're contradicting. You're worried, am I going to misinform people? Do I even know what's going on? And then all of a sudden it falls into place, and instead of having declining eyesight, I find I don't need reading glasses anymore. And so it couldn't be that the computer screen is bad, because I was in front of it for so many hours. I was putting in, well, 13 was a lot, but anywhere from 8 to 13 for quite a few days. And since then I've played around, and sometimes I think my eyes get bloodshot because of this. And so I think, well, I shouldn't have bloodshot eyes. So then I put the radioactive stones away. The bloodshot eyes go away. I have nice clear eyes, and then the eyesight declines. But I'd rather have the ability to read without glasses, so I bring the stones back, and I'm going to try to tackle the bloodshot eyes another way. But I got my eye doctor to come on the show after he tested me, and I said, look, this is really amazing, because I don't need my reading glasses. And he said, 11 years ago, he would have given me a prescription for reading glasses. And he said today he wouldn't. And he said, usually after 11 years, your eyesight gets worse. It doesn't get better. So the point is I think if we can do this blogging thing where we keep the communities going, we don't have somebody coming in and being so nasty and rude, and people get pissed off and they leave, but just keep the dialogue going, keep the discussion going, I think we would be so much richer for it, so much more cultured, so much more educated. That's my hope.
I think so.
See, when I began in journalism, it was hieroglyphics, so we go back a little further than you're talking about. We didn't have quite those problems.
Right. You started with a stone and chisel.
Keora, do you speak Russian here?
Do I speak Russian?
Yeah, Keora.
No. We have 3 minutes left. Is that what you
3
mean?
minutes?
Yeah. How to best use our last 3 minutes. But did you want to ask about Russia? Because I'm becoming very interested in Russia now.
No, I don't.
Placebo.
I
Placebo.
Placebo.
Susie, what do you mean?
That's Russian for please, I think.
Oh,
For
placebo.
what?
How do you say
Placebo.
please in Russian? Our control room said placebo.
Isn't that nice?
I was thinking of the placebo effect.
Yes, exactly. Which I don't know if it would work with marijuana.
No,
Let's bring it back to marijuana, shall we?
Okay.
Yeah.
What? How do you want?
Well, I just wonder whether the placebo effect would be something to consider with marijuana. I don't think so. I think it's a definite, you get the benefit from taking the drug. I don't think if someone says, here, have this joint, and it's not really marijuana, that you're going to really feel anything. But who knows? I think there's so much in our brains.
Placebo actually has an effect. If
I
somebody
know.
gives you something and says it's going to do something for you, it does
Well,
make
it's the power
something
of the
happen.
mind.
Yeah.
And that takes me back to keeping a positive attitude as you're facing, a life-threatening illness. If you go into going, oh, I'm never going to get better, this is all downhill, I'm going to die soon, and you have that attitude, then I think that's strongly going to affect your outcome.
I see what you're saying. Rick said, though, that with the cannabis oil, the hemp oil, somebody came who said, this is absolutely not going to work, and he was really in bad case, and it worked. So even if you don't believe it's going to work,
Right.
it works. But back to placebo, by sort of denigrating it, saying it's a bad thing, placebo, or it's sort of inconsequential, it turns out a lot of pharmaceuticals that are approved don't even reach placebo effect. They're so barely effective, if at all, the way they manipulate, that by saying placebo means nothing, they're able to not have to deal with even that threshold.
No, I know there's a lot of studies that show that placebo effect is very, very powerful. And that, to me, it shows the power of the mind.
Maybe it was the love of your sister.
Well,
Love my sister, love my
we'll
brother, my
look
father,
forward
my
to
mother,
hearing
my
from your
No, to give you
viewers.
the cookies.
Will
and
they
my partner.
do your viewers write in? And we'd like to hear from them, particularly if they have a solution to memory loss.
Yeah, let's put that out.
And
I hope to be getting a call in from a scientist in Spain,
All
and
right.
I'll put that to him, because you've got the clinical experience that the doctors have, and then the laboratory experience that the scientists have, and then the experience that the journalists have. So we can put it all together.
it's terrific.
Yeah. So anyway,
All right.
this is Paula Gloria, and this show is Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. We've had an excursion with Bernard Gavzer. He's a journalist of many years' experience, and his son has joined us on set, and he has the wonderful first-hand experience with his body.
You keep saying many years of experience. I'm only 39 years old. I mean,
You have a long time before
Yeah,
you
so
qualify for the Senior Citizens Center to give out the marijuana. We want wise and mature people to give out.
I'd like to institute that system of distributing it free and having it distributed by senior citizens.
Now, why do you say senior citizens?
Why do who?
Why do you say senior citizens? Because of their wisdom, their greater
Well,
wisdom?
no, because there are more of them, for one thing.
There's more of them.
Sure, people that are seniors aren't going to go away anymore. They're going to do. They're organized. They're doing very, very well.
The Grey Panthers.
And they have a lot of time.
Huh?
They have a lot of time available, and they want something to do, and something they feel motivated to do and connected to, and beneficial to their community.
Absolutely. Well, it was very nice of you to invite us.
It was really an
We're
honor
very
for me to
glad
have you, Bernie,
to have been here.
and to have you, Adam.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And thank you. This is Paula Gloria, and we've just had an excursion farther down the rabbit hole. Stay tuned for future shows. Thank you. Thanks. It's a provocative quote.
And he was that kind of a personality. He engaged people, and he wanted to stimulate people to be involved in really confronting what they were doing and how to address it on a broad scale. I mean, he had used, LSD is what he was really talking about after that, 311 times, I think, in his life.